I wasn't supposed to move that week. The lease wasn't ready, the paperwork wasn't finished, and the realtor told me more than once to wait for confirmation. The envelope arrived anyway. It was thin and off-white, without a logo, just my name typed in clean block letters. Inside was a single key and a short note that gave instructions instead of explanations. It said the unit number, the day, and warned me not to bring anyone with me. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't missing something obvious. I stood in my kitchen holding the key longer than necessary and noticed that it was warm. That detail stayed with me. It suggested recent contact, and it made the situation feel less random than I wanted it to be. I went to the building that evening. It looked older than the photos online, and the lobby lights flickered in a steady rhythm that didn't feel broken. The pattern was consistent, like a metronome rather than a fault. The elevator didn't creak when I stepped inside. Old elevators always do, even when they function properly. This one moved smoothly, like it had been installed recently inside an older structure. As the elevator climbed, my phone lost signal. That part was normal. What wasn't normal was the silence that followed. The air felt heavier, and I found myself watching my reflection to stay focused. When I blinked, my reflection reacted a fraction of a second later. The delay was small, but noticeable. I tightened my grip on the key and forced my hand to relax. The hallway on the 14th floor smelled faintly of detergent and warm metal. The door frame of Unit 14B looked recently repainted, and the color didn't match the rest of the corridor. The key turned too easily. Inside, the apartment was staged with neutral furniture, a folded blanket, and a bowl of green apples placed carefully on the counter. A lamp was already on in the corner, casting steady light across the room. The air inside felt warm, like someone had been there shortly before I arrived. On the kitchen counter, a mug sat by the sink with a fresh ring of moisture beneath it. I told myself there was a reasonable explanation and walked further inside instead of leaving. The television turned on without sound, showing a dark screen with a single line of text welcoming me home. I stepped back from the screen as the message changed and instructed me to repeat it. I spoke the words clearly. The response came a moment later, repeating my voice with the same pace and volume. I stood still, listening carefully, aware that this was no longer coincidence. That night I tested the apartment deliberately. I spoke ordinary facts first, the kind people never question. I stated my name, where I was born, and simple details from memory. Each time the second voice repeated my words after a short delay with controlled accuracy. When I tried to lie, nothing happened. I changed details and waited, but the apartment remained silent. The difference was consistent enough to confirm a pattern. Truth caused repetition. Lies caused silence. The rule became clear through repetition, not explanation, and I stopped testing once the result no longer changed. The next morning, I opened the door and found a paper bag on the floor outside my apartment. Inside were warm bread rolls and a bottle of juice. The receipt beneath them was blank. An older woman across the hall watched me pick it up. Her expression didn't change. When I tried to speak to her, she shook her head once and lifted her hand slightly, signaling me to stop. She went back inside and locked her door. The sound of the lock engaging twice was deliberate and unhurried. Later that day, I called a friend. I described the situation calmly, avoiding exaggeration. As I spoke, the second voice repeated my sentences from behind me. My friend asked who else was in the room. Before I could answer, another voice repeated his question from the hallway, using his exact tone. The call ended without warning. When I checked my phone, there was no record of it. The conversation had been removed completely. That evening, I wrote down everything I had learned. When I finished, a new sentence appeared beneath my writing in handwriting that wasn't mine. It warned me that if I ever heard myself twice, I should stop speaking immediately. I checked the apartment again, confirming that everything was locked and unchanged. The second voice repeated my breathing once, steady and controlled. Then it repeated the start of a sentence I had not spoken yet. I recognized the shift and remained silent. I decided to document the apartment instead of reacting emotionally. I placed my phone on the counter and recorded the room overnight without speaking. In the morning, the phone was face down. I don't remember turning it over. The recording lasted 8 hours, most of it ordinary noise. Shortly after 2 in the morning, I heard my own voice say my name several times, each repetition closer to the microphone. I left the apartment with my keys and wallet. The elevator was already open. As it descended, I heard footsteps behind me, but saw no one when I turned. In the mirror, my reflection stood alone until a second figure appeared briefly behind my shoulder. The image corrected itself. Outside, I heard my own voice tell me to stop, spoken clearly and at normal volume. I returned upstairs. The woman across the hall told me not to speak to the apartment again. She explained that it didn't want fear or resistance. It wanted familiarity. She said people leave, and the apartment keeps the parts that answer. When I asked how many people, she didn't respond. She went back inside and locked the door. The second click followed the first after a short delay. That night, I avoided speaking entirely. The apartment reacted by producing controlled sounds and adjusting its behavior. My voice came from the television and asked me to repeat a phrase. When I didn't respond, it used a familiar tone. I stayed still and did not turn around. The decision to remain silent mattered. On the fifth day, I forgot a word I used regularly. I understood the object, but not the name. When I hesitated, the apartment supplied the word. That pattern repeated. The process felt efficient rather than aggressive, and that realization unsettled me. Lights turned on before I entered rooms. The water temperature adjusted automatically. The mirror showed my reflection without delay. I tested a lie and received no response. The hallway light shut off shortly after. That evening, I saw a new tenant holding an envelope identical to mine. Before he could speak, my mouth answered for him. The second voice followed immediately. The pressure in my chest made it clear the process was repeating. I am recording this because I still have enough control to do so. Horror is not sudden. It builds through small permissions. If you hear your own voice respond when you did not speak, leave immediately. Do not explain. Do not call anyone from inside. The apartment does not pursue people. It waits for them to return once. After that, it already knows how to answer.